My name is Franklin, and I'm an atheist. I've read a lot about religion, but reading tells you little about how it's actually practiced. 76% of people in the United States claim some sort of religion. Christians, Buddhists, Jedi. What is it about their religion that resonates with who they are? How does their religion make them a better person? And what do they think is still missing about how we understand the world? My goal is to grow my knowledge and wither my ignorance. I think it's important to talk to them and find out what they believe. What can I say about Unitarians? Well, before this episode, not much. Unitarians have been active and important in the United States for over 200 years. No reason at all to listen to me on this, so let's talk to Reverend Pupke about Unitarian Universalism. Hello and welcome to the What They Believe series. Today I'm speaking with Reverend Pupke of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Richmond, Virginia. Reverend, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be with you.
There are several versions of Christianity. With which one do you identify?
Unitarian Universalism comes out of the Christian tradition of Congregationalism, which goes back through the Pilgrims and the Radical Reformation of Christianity. But for some time now, we've not identified as a Christian faith. So instead, we identify as a faith out of the tradition, but welcoming non-Christians, other believers in the other traditions into our midst. So we're not so specifically now understood to be Christian, though that is a part of our distinguished history and theological emergence.
Were you always a Unitarian? Were you Unitarian as a child? Were you a family of Unitarians?
No, I grew up Catholic, very Catholic school. I was there 6 or 7 days a week. And in fact, I was a Catholic nun for a while.
Really?
When Pope John Paul was selected to be the Pope, the church had a time where it changed to become more conservative. And I felt that it wasn't a place I could stay without some discord. And I really didn't want to do that. I found Unitarian Universalism in Portland, Oregon. And the way I found them was that they were out doing things, and they had declared their block a no-hate zone, and they were very active in social justice, and that's how I first heard about them and became a member there.
What inspired you to become a minister?
Well, I was only there about 6 months when I realized how much I wanted to take on leadership in the church. It's possible to do that as a lay leader in our movement, but for me, it was more service and leadership that I was wanting to offer. And so I decided to go to seminary in Chicago at Meadville Lombard, one of our 2 seminaries, and to learn more about our faith and to become a minister, which here I am 18 years later.
Part of Christianity I never quite understood was the Trinity of God. I've read that Unitarians do not necessarily accept the idea of 3 entities in one God. Can you explain your views on the Holy Trinity?
Yes, we have a lot of different views on it, but our history makes us Unitarians because we did not find in our biblical studies that there was support for the Trinity. I think more in line with Jewish thought, God is an understanding we have of a moral authority, an inspiration. Not all Unitarian Universalists believe in God. In fact, a large number of them identify as being humanist. So therefore, we have people who believe in God, don't believe in God, and yet we think we all are there to learn to grow ourselves morally and in service to others and to strengthen community. People need a place in their lives to go that isn't work and that isn't family, but where you can be seen, understood, and loved. And that's what we try to do in our communities. So the Trinity is held as a belief by some, not by others, mostly not. But we are inspired by the life of Jesus.
Historians do not agree on if Jesus ever existed at all. I've never had any difficulties accepting that Jesus was a real person. However, the Son of God or having superpowers is a lot harder to accept. As I understand it, Unitarians accept Jesus as an important moral authority, but not necessarily as a supernatural one. Can you explain your views on this?
Yes. What originally caused the formation of Unitarianism and later became commonplace in Universalism before they came together was an understanding that the teachings of Jesus are the most important things. We have no knowledge of whether there are or are not gods. People for history for a long time have had different opinions on those things. But the teachings of Jesus are instrumental in terms of thinking about others, serving others. The Good Samaritan parable is a pretty good one about people reaching across difference to take care of one another and to make sure that each of us knows that in the human family there are good people who will support you and take care of you when you need help. That is a more important teaching than the divinity of Jesus, we think. We can't prove the divinity of Jesus, but we can prove that the teachings of Jesus have been influential. People say they don't know whether Jesus existed or not. There's scant historical information, but there seems to be a big effect. So I, like you, prefer to think that Jesus or someone like Jesus existed. And we are all on the journey of trying to learn what he taught and other religious leaders have taught as well. The Buddha, Muhammad, we learn from them as well. There's many good teachings that we draw upon from them and others.
I can make an analogy. Perhaps it's like Betty Crocker, who's not a real person, although people thought she was for about 10 years. She was the most popular woman in the United States, even though when people found out she wasn't real. But I imagine the recipes were still good, even though it was not a real person. Is that a good analogy?
Yes, the story of Jesus, different elements of the story of Jesus are instrumental and inspirational to different people, you know? And I suspect Betty Crocker, the notion that there was a Betty Crocker made what the recipes said authoritative. In a certain sense, the living of Christian values has been a struggle for a lot of people. Traditionally, a lot of people have failed to live them, but that doesn't make it less interesting to try to understand the wisdom in those teachings. We draw our wisdom as we find it, and we can find it a lot of places.
Outside of a few jokes on The Simpsons, I really don't see Unitarians in our culture, even though almost 9% of US presidents were Unitarians. Why do you think Unitarians are left out of the popular conversation?
We are a small group, and people who have practiced religion in the United States traditionally come from Judaism, Christianity. Buddhism is a large and growing group right now, though it's very dispersed and decentralized. So I think what we find is that many people find it odd to think about Unitarian not believing in God as mandatory, not having a creed. And yet when they hear about it, they think, wow, that's a cool thing. You could learn from Buddhism, you could learn from Christianity, or you could learn from humanism. We have all those people amidst us, Hindus and others. So I feel as though we actually do have a part in the culture. We tend to be the kind of people who are on staff at universities and government departments and things like that. And we do have influence, but it's a quiet, not a braggadocious kind of influence. And I think when it comes to social justice, we definitely have an influence. Many people refer to us and ask us what we're doing on justice issues, come to us to learn, and also to partner with us, which is great. I've demonstrated with a lot of different traditional groups. I was in Charlottesville with a very diverse group of religious leaders. I was in Washington on immigration with a lot of Methodist women. We can partner with whomever. And that's the kind of influence we want to have, is the quiet work being done that other people can take all the credit they want for it, but we'll show up for sure. So that's kind of why I think we're not big and bold on those things.
When you said you were in Charlottesville, were you in Charlottesville during what we now just refer to as Charlottesville?
60 members of my church were there. And I'm very proud of them because they marched. A good number of them went forward to the place where the first clashes happened. I was standing with, I think, 6 or 7 other Unitarian Universalists who basically we stood and put ourselves between the rally point and the white supremacists. But the big clash broke out with Antifa, and so we were standing in the middle of it. In fact, one of our interns, now ordained, ran into the midst of the crowd because beaten people couldn't get out, and he ran in to pull people out to safety. That's the kind of thing that I hope Unitarians will always be doing.
Well, that is certainly walking the walk. The first time I saw a rainbow flag on a place of worship was my local Unitarian church. Why is LGBT plus rights important to you?
Because we're non-creedal, we understand we have to look to love. Love has to guide us. And so some of our ministers were quietly doing ceremonies of commitment back in the 40s. In 1970, the Unitarian Universalist Association came out for gay rights, gay marriage. And in fact, in Massachusetts, when they passed the law that one could marry in Massachusetts, the first service was performed by Bill Sinkford, Reverend Bill Sinkford, who is president of our association. We have been radically committed to this and to Black Lives Mattering and other things. Yes, we're the first people to hang the rainbow flag or hang a Black Lives Matter banner. Most of our churches have had them up for years now. And it's nice to see the rest of the culture move toward that. But the reason that we have these commitments is because they're simply rooted in justice. Individuals have inherent worth and dignity, and that is one of our principles. And we are all interdependent in a society, so we don't want anyone to be pushed to the margin or oppressed, whether they're an immigrant to this country, whether they're a gay, lesbian, trans person. And we don't want Black lives taken lightly and treated as a separate caste. So these are positions we've had for a long time. We struggle internally because we're part of the culture, and we have to learn. We have to move out of our zone of comfort and toward justice. But those are the reasons we stand with people at the margins and try to bring their rights to the center.
Do you believe in an everlasting soul? And does everyone have one?
I believe in the consciousness of all beings, all things. In fact, I believe some of the things we think are inanimate have souls. For example, just to give you an example, I believe trees are living things with internal consciousness that's different from our own. I believe that all of us should work to grow our soul. It is the nature of humanity to want, I think, good things, to seek happiness, and growing your soul is how that happens. I preach, of course, to our humanists and say, it is your inner life that, I consider to be your soul. And however you conceptualize that is fine. You need not believe in God, but let's grow. Let's all create a space where we can encourage and love one another enough to trust that we can grow together. And I've seen people be changed, their lives be touched. I've seen people who grew up Jewish helping people who grew up nothing. Christians, in deep dialogue with Sufis. And so I think it's all possible that we can grow together. I mean, to me, in Unitarian Universalism, we invite everybody in to grow their soul. I hope, anyway.
Do you believe in an afterlife?
I personally believe that we're part of a great oneness, that all consciousness in its various forms, our human selves, the animal kingdom, the living biotic kingdom, and even the rocks, have a consciousness that ultimately will come to understand when we continue to grow and be wise. When a human body is laid to rest, all the atoms cannot be destroyed. They go somewhere else. And we don't know what the consciousness is that they carry. As a metaphor, I think the Hindu teaching on reincarnation is pretty cool. Because in fact, all that matter goes somewhere. The very oxygen we exhale carries little bits of ourselves to the world. So I feel pretty unified with the whole. And therefore, I think there's a oneness that I'm cycling in and out of, not as this particular being in all consciousness, but as some portion of it. You and I share atoms that come from common sources and will return to those sources. That's the consciousness I believe we should carry, and simply trust that what we are now is a gift, and so it will be as we disassemble and become something new.
Is there any passage from the Bible that resonates with you personally that you wish more people knew about?
Without hope and a vision, the people will perish. That's from Amos. And I think we always have to remember, especially these days, that it's important to find the sources of hope in life, wherever they arise. And in the human world, in nature and other places, they do arise. And part of what we're trying to do is to name them, point them out, bring them into our lives. I'm here in Richmond, Virginia. And just recently, we've seen a lot of hope out on the streets of our city as we moved out of an old mythology of what the Civil War was about and who were the heroes. And now we've moved to a different thing. We come to a real understanding of all people being welcome. So in our tradition, one of the things that we're trying to do is to get past the dogma and the creedal assumptions and focus on walking the talk. There's another verse from James that I think is a good one. Be ye doers of the word, not only hearers. And that's about walking your talk.
Other than the topics already discussed here, in what way would you say Unitarian is separate from other forms of Christianity?
We believe strongly in reason and freedom. We believe a person has to go on a personal life journey to know what they believe and how they want to live and what their practices are and whether or not they want to be part of a religious community. And we understand people come with different decisions on that. It's perfectly fine. But it does make it challenging because we can be lumped in with Christianity and people assume that we are creedal and we are Christians in a traditional sense. That's not who we are. But the thing that I think would separate us over and again is we believe that revelation isn't sealed. The notion in Christianity is that Christ was a living revelation that calls them all to follow Jesus, as interpreted by theologians. We actually believe that Jesus was an inspirational teacher, but that we are not compelled to any creed. We're free to learn and to grow from Marcus Aurelius and from Pema Chodron and from Calvin, if we're inspired by Jean Calvin. We are free. And more than that, we are responsible. And in our lives, learning to live in that morally responsible way will call us to learn from many truths. And so we are non-creedal and we are free to learn from all truths. And that's the biggest difference between us. And most Christian churches teach that, but many Christian people believe what we actually believe. So they're cultural, they're traditional, and so sometimes people stay, but sometimes they wind up on our doorstep.
I'd like to thank Reverend Pupke for joining us today, and I will right now. Thank you, Reverend.
My pleasure. This is a great project. I wish you lots of good luck.
There's a minor thing from my childhood for which I can be thankful, and that's that my family bought milk in jugs. So therefore, my before-school breakfast was not an early morning reminder that I could be abducted. For almost 20 years, milk cartons in the United States featured pictures and information on missing children. Mostly white children, and mostly taken by family members in a custody dispute. And this program was totally effective, or not effective at all. Nobody kept records on the efficacy of this program, but those dairy companies got a tax break, so there's that. And comedians got some more material, so there's that too. Conversely, in 1993, the rock band Soul Asylum released a video for their song Runaway Train, and, like the milk cartons, it featured pictures and information on missing children. They released 2 updates to the video because some of those children had been found. In fact, of the 36 children featured, 26 were eventually found. I'm not sure if I have a point here, but I do have a question. Have you ever noticed when people say celebrities should not take up causes, they're never talking about celebrities that agree with their particular personal position? You know, for most of these things, I do some research. However, for this bit of trivia, I don't need to. I just know it's true. What do you think is the most used language in the world? Is it Hindi? Well, a lot of humans do speak Hindi, but it will take more than 1/3 of a billion people. Thanks to colonialism, you might say English or Spanish, but nope. Mandarin Chinese? Not even close. The most used language in the world is binary. Every word I'm speaking right now is being translated into binary. And if I say it faster, or I say it louder, it's being translated differently. The video itself, the colors and the motion, is being translated into another language. The distribution system that's delivering this to whatever device you're using it in, that device is constantly speaking in a language you can't understand. Thank you for watching episode 10, or episode 1010, and may the road rise with you.